Okay. So let's dive into this historical mystery.
Yeah.
One that just doesn't seem to go away.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
We got a ton of sources on Lizzie Borden,
Right. The infamous Lizzie Borden.
the woman accused of, axing her father and stepmother
Yeah.
way back in 1892.
1892, that's right.
And of course, everybody, remembers the rhyme.
Of course.
But the big question is, was she actually a cold-blooded killer?
Yeah. Or was there more to the story?
Or, as some historians are saying these days, was she more a victim of circumstance?
A product of her time, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe even prejudice played a role.
Could be.
So today on, Grifter or Gifted,
Yeah,
we're going to try to separate fact from fiction
that's right.
and hopefully help you decide.
Yeah, was she a grifter or was she gifted?
So first, let's kind of set the scene,
Okay.
before that, infamous day in Fall River, Massachusetts.
Right.
What was Lizzie Borden's life actually like?
Right. What was her world like?
The sources paint a picture that's more complicated than just, the whole spinster label she got saddled with.
Yeah. Definitely more to her than just that one word.
So at 32, Lizzie was considered a spinster,
Which, back then...
which, back then that carried some serious weight.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a compliment.
She was living at home with her father, Andrew Borden,
Right. Her wealthy father.
and her stepmother, Abby.
Right.
And it seems like family dynamics.
Yeah, not exactly the Brady Bunch.
Not exactly. Leave it to Beaver or anything.
Right.
The sources point to some, resentment brewing under the surface,
Oh, yeah, there are definitely some tensions there.
especially about Andrew's, money decisions after Lizzie's mom passed away.
Seems like money was a big point of contention in that household.
Yeah. So I'm picking up on a theme here.
Okay, what's that?
Strained relationship with the stepmother, and Lizzie not exactly thrilled with how Andrew was, managing the family fortune.
Interesting.
Can you unpack that a little?
Absolutely.
Give us a little more detail.
So Andrew Borden was known to be a pretty frugal guy. Yeah, even though he was one of the wealthiest men in all of Fall River.
You'd think he'd be, flashing his cash a little bit.
Right. You'd expect a guy like that to have a mansion, throw lavish parties.
Yeah.
But Andrew, he preferred to keep things simple. Lived a modest life. Didn't flaunt his wealth.
Well, that's admirable in some ways,
It is.
but I guess it could rub some people the wrong way.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Especially maybe Lizzie,
Possibly.
and his frugality kind of extended to where he chose to live.
Interesting. How so?
He opted to stay in a, relatively modest home
Yeah, okay.
in a neighborhood that was becoming more and more populated by Catholic immigrants.
Ah. And that was a point of contention for Lizzie.
Yeah, big time.
Interesting.
So we've got an unmarried woman at a time when that was pretty unusual,
Oh, yeah.
living in a house that didn't really reflect her family's wealth,
Yeah.
plus some serious family tension simmering under the surface.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It's starting to feel like a powder keg, wouldn't you say?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and all of this just sets the stage for that scorching hot day
Yep.
in August of 1892.
The day everything changed.
August 4th, 1892.
A date etched in history.
A day that would change everything.
For everyone involved.
Walk us through the Borden home
All right.
and those terrifying discoveries.
Let's step back in time.
Help us visualize what the investigators walked into.
All right, so picture this.
Okay.
A 2-story wood frame house on 2nd Street in Fall River.
Not exactly, opulent for a man of Andrew Borden's wealth.
No, not at all.
Okay, so inside, what did they find?
Inside, a truly horrific scene unfolded.
Good boy.
Andrew Borden was found slumped over on a sofa in the downstairs sitting room,
Downstairs.
struck over 10 times with what appeared to be a hatchet.
A hatchet.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The brutality was just undeniable.
Wow. And,
And later,
yeah.
they found Abby Borden's body
Okay.
upstairs in a guest room.
So both of them murdered in the house.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And she had been struck 19 times.
19 times?
19 times. That's just unimaginable.
Absolutely brutal.
What was the immediate reaction?
Well, I mean,
This is
you can imagine.
it's huge.
Shock was just palpable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the sheer violence of it all, but also where it happened.
Right.
This wasn't some back alley.
Yeah.
It was a seemingly respectable home.
Right. In a respectable neighborhood.
Exactly. So in those first few hours, investigators were scrambling.
For clues.
Yeah. Trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah. And given the social climate back then, was there like a rush to blame it on, a foreigner?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Given the time period, there was this immediate push to pin the crime on an outsider.
An outsider.
They even arrested a Portuguese immigrant
Really?
Yeah, which really highlights that rampant nativism that often colored these investigations back then.
Yeah. Wow. So they had a suspect, at least for a little while.
Yeah, for a short time.
But what about Lizzie?
Right, Lizzie.
The sources suggest her alibi wasn't exactly rock solid.
It wasn't the strongest alibi.
So what was her story?
Initially, she said she was out in the barn
In the barn?
looking for iron to fix a screen door, but then her story changed.
It changed.
She claimed she was actually eating pears in the barn loft when the murders happened.
So 2 different stories.
2 different stories.
That's definitely suspicious.
It raises some red flags.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, what she was trying to hide.
Right, or maybe she was just flustered and confused.
Yeah, maybe just caught up in the moment.
Who knows, but it definitely makes you think.
Did anything else about Lizzie's behavior kind of raise suspicion?
Well, there was that incident with a note.
A note.
Yeah, supposedly Abby received a note urging her to visit a sick friend,
Okay.
but it turned out that friend never actually sent a note.
So a fake note.
Yeah, a fabricated note.
That's definitely adding to the suspicion around Lizzie.
Yeah, it makes you question her involvement in what happened that day.
Mm.
Oh, and we can't forget about the most incriminating piece of evidence.
Oh, yeah, what's that?
Or at least the attempt to get it. Lizzie actually tried to buy prussic acid,
Prussic acid.
a powerful
Poison.
just a few days before the murders.
Okay, that does sound pretty incriminating.
Yeah, hard to explain that one away.
So what did she say about that?
What was her excuse?
Did she try to, brush it off as something innocent?
Well, she claimed she needed the poison to clean a sealskin coat.
A sealskin coat?
Yeah, but the problem was
Yep.
no one could back up that claim.
Oh, really?
Nope. And thankfully, the druggist refused to sell it to her without a prescription.
Smart druggist.
Yeah, dodged a bullet there.
So we've got the changing alibis,
Right.
the suspicious note that turned out to be fake,
Yeah.
and then this attempt to buy poison.
Pretty damning.
With all of that pointing towards Lizzie,
Yeah.
did they actually find anything at the crime scene
Ah, good question.
that definitively linked her to the murders?
Right. Like a smoking gun.
Yeah.
Well, they did find a handleless hatchet head
Okay, hatchet.
down in the basement, but they could never actually confirm that was the murder weapon.
Really?
No.
So no fingerprints, no blood-soaked clothes,
Nothing.
nothing concretely tying her to the crime scene?
They searched high and low, but found nothing.
So it sounds like the police definitely had their suspicion,
Oh, yeah. They were definitely suspicious.
but with no physical evidence.
Right.
It must have been tough to build a case.
Incredibly difficult.
So what happened next?
Well,
Did they arrest Lizzie anyway?
even without that hard proof,
Yeah.
they did. They arrested her. And
Okay.
the trial that followed became a national sensation.
Oh, wow.
It ignited all these public debates
About.
about gender roles, about class,
Okay.
and the very nature of justice.
Wow, this was a big deal.
Huge.
And we have to remember, this was a time of, massive social change.
Absolutely. A society in flux.
And the idea of a woman,
Yeah.
especially a woman from a quote-unquote good family,
Right.
committing such brutal acts.
It was almost unthinkable to many
Yeah. Wow, so the stage is set.
for a high-profile trial.
Yeah. What were some of the key arguments they presented during the trial?
Right. What was the prosecution's strategy?
Did they focus on Lizzie's, inconsistencies?
Right. Her changing stories.
Yeah. Or did they try to, establish a clear motive?
Like, what was driving her to do this?
Yeah, so what was their angle?
The prosecution really tried to paint Lizzie as this cold and calculating killer,
Cold and calculating.
driven by resentment and maybe even greed.
Greed.
Yeah, they really hammered home those inconsistent statements she gave to the police
Okay.
and emphasized that whole poison purchase just days before the murders.
So they're trying to make her look bad.
Oh, yeah. They wanted to make her seem untrustworthy
All right.
and capable of such violence.
So they were trying to paint her as the grifter.
Exactly.
Did it work?
I mean,
Did the public buy into that narrative?
not entirely, no.
Okay.
The defense was actually pretty clever.
Okay. How so?
They countered those arguments by highlighting the lack of any direct evidence linking Lizzie to the murders.
Okay. Oh.
They argued that her seemingly cold demeanor during the investigation could be chalked up to the morphine
The morphine.
that she was prescribed by the family doctor after the trauma of the murders.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Morphine could definitely affect her behavior.
And testimony.
Yeah. So did the defense try to offer a different explanation for Lizzie's actions?
So a different motive.
Yeah. Or maybe suggest someone else might have been responsible.
So like an alternative suspect.
Yeah.
Well, they focused on emphasizing Lizzie's involvement in her church.
Right.
and various charitable organizations.
So painting her in a positive light.
Exactly, portraying her as this pious and respectable woman,
Okay.
incapable of such brutality.
A good person.
Right. They were playing into those societal expectations of the time, the whole angel in the house archetype.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that a woman like Lizzie could commit these crimes would have been a complete shock to the system back then.
Right. So they're basically saying, look, a woman of her social standing,
Right.
active in her community,
Yeah.
wouldn't be capable of something like this.
Exactly.
It sounds like they were leaning heavily on public perceptions of women
Yeah, they were playing to the jury's biases, for sure.
to try to sway the jury.
Yep,
Did they address the poison incident at all?
they did.
Okay.
They stuck with Lizzie's explanation,
Right.
saying she wanted to use the prussic acid to clean a sealskin coat.
Right.
But again,
Yeah.
no one could corroborate her story,
Yeah.
which made it really hard to completely dismiss the prosecution's concerns.
Yeah, that seems like a risky strategy. You know,
Yeah.
relying so heavily on public perception.
And Lizzie's social standing.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if there was more to their approach.
Like, what else were they thinking?
Did they ever point the finger at someone else?
An alternative suspect.
Yeah. Did they suggest any other theories about who might have been responsible?
Well, they didn't directly accuse anyone else.
Okay.
They were much more subtle.
Okay.
They focused on poking holes in the prosecution's case
Okay.
and creating reasonable doubt.
Okay.
They highlighted the bungled initial investigation,
Okay.
you know, that premature arrest of the Portuguese immigrant,
Right.
and the overall lack of solid evidence against Lizzie.
So they're basically saying, hey,
Yeah,
the police rushed to judgment
right.
and they got it wrong.
Precisely.
Did they touch on the anti-immigrant sentiment
Oh, that's interesting.
that fueled that initial rush to judgment?
Yeah.
Seems like that could have been a powerful argument,
Oh, absolutely.
especially given the social climate at the time.
Yeah, playing on those underlying fears and prejudices.
So did they bring that up?
They did. It was subtle,
Okay.
but effective,
Like so.
by emphasizing that hasty arrest of an innocent immigrant.
Okay.
The defense reminded the jury of those prevailing prejudices of the time. They were implying that Lizzie might have been a convenient scapegoat,
Right.
someone who fit the profile of what people feared,
Yeah.
rather than the actual perpetrator.
Okay, so we've got the prosecution struggling to present a solid case,
Right.
the defense leveraging societal perceptions.
And raising reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and all of this happening against a backdrop of, simmering social tensions.
It's a fascinating dynamic.
Yeah, it must have been a pretty tense courtroom drama.
I can only imagine.
So what happened?
What was the verdict?
Did the jury buy the defense's arguments?
Well, the jury deliberated for only 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes before returning with their verdict.
And the verdict was
Not guilty on all counts.
not guilty.
Lizzie Borden was a free woman.
Wow, 90 minutes. That's pretty quick.
It is a surprisingly short deliberation.
It sounds like the defense's strategy worked.
They played their cards right.
What's a justice served?
That's the question, isn't it?
Or did Lizzie Borden get away with murder?
I mean, that's the question that's been haunting people for over a century. I mean, we can't really know for sure
Right.
what went on in that jury room.
Right.
But the lack of a murder weapon,
Yeah.
the, inconsistencies in the investigation,
Right.
and Lizzie's social standing,
Yeah.
those probably all played a role.
Right. I mean,
And you add in the social context.
yeah, the anxieties about immigrants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's quite possible that reasonable doubt was enough to secure Lizzie's freedom.
It's a reminder that justice isn't always so clear-cut.
Yeah.
It's not always black and white.
Right.
Sometimes it's more like shades of gray.
Yeah, definitely.
So even though the legal system, reached its verdict,
Yeah.
public opinion is a whole different story.
Oh, yeah, totally different.
So what happened to Lizzie after the trial?
Right. What became of her?
Could she ever really escape that shadow of suspicion?
Right. Could she ever truly move on?
Well, Lizzie ended up inheriting her father's wealth,
Oh, wow. So she was a wealthy woman.
and she lived a pretty comfortable life.
Yeah.
She even moved into a much larger, more modern home,
Interesting.
which is kind of ironic,
Yeah.
given her father's frugality.
Right. A complete 180 from her father's lifestyle.
It seems like she was finally able to, live life on her own terms,
Yeah.
but not without some consequences.
What do you mean?
Well, she and her sister Emma,
Okay.
they actually changed their last name
They did.
to Lisbeth.
Lisbeth.
Yeah, trying to distance themselves from the scandal.
Trying to reinvent themselves?
Yeah, a name change like that.
That's any volumes.
It's like they were trying to rewrite their own history.
Trying to outrun their past.
But could they really outrun those whispers and those lingering doubts.
Right. Could they ever truly escape the rumors?
Not entirely.
So people still talked.
Oh, yeah. While some people supported Lizzie,
Okay.
others completely ostracized her.
Wow. So she was a social pariah.
In a way, yeah. And eventually,
Yeah.
her and her sister's relationship kind of fell apart. And they actually lived apart for the last 18 years of Lizzie's life.
Wow. So the shadow of suspicion never really left her.
Even with that not guilty verdict.
It's like the stigma never went away.
The sources also mention some alternative theories
Oh, I'm interested
that
in
have
that.
popped up over the years.
Yeah, what are some of the other explanations people have come up with?
About the Borden murders.
Right. Was there another killer out there?
So one theory involves Andrew Borden's illegitimate son, William.
William.
Some people think he might have committed the murders.
Really?
And maybe even
Yeah.
with Lizzie and Emma.
Conspiring to cover it up.
Yeah, another theory
Okay.
speculates that the sisters planned and carried out the murders together.
Wow. The sisters working together.
Driven by, maybe a desire to break free from their controlling father.
That's a pretty strong motive.
And then there's even been speculation
Okay.
about an affair
An affair.
between Lizzie and the family's maid,
Oh, wow.
Bridget Sullivan,
Okay.
and that the murders were like a desperate attempt
Yeah.
to protect their
A
secret.
crime of passion.
It's amazing how, over a century later,
Yeah.
this case keeps generating new theories and interpretations.
Yeah. It really captures the imagination.
And of course, we can't forget the rhyme.
The infamous rhyme.
Lizzie Borden took an axe.
Right.
Even now, that simple rhyme kind of shapes how we see this case.
It's like it's become part of the story itself.
Exactly. The rhyme itself has become a piece of American folklore.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes sure that the story
Yeah.
and Lizzie's place in it
Right.
will never be forgotten.
It's fascinating how folklore like that can shape our collective memory.
Yeah.
Keeps history alive in a way that textbooks often can't.
So after digging into all these sources,
Yeah, after all this research.
do we have a definitive answer?
Right.
Grifter or gifted?
The ultimate question.
Did Lizzie Borden commit those gruesome murders?
I mean, the evidence is inconclusive.
Yeah.
The motives are complex.
Right.
And societal biases definitely played a role in the trial's outcome.
So it seems like we're left with more questions than answers.
Yeah, it's a real head-scratcher.
But maybe that's the enduring allure of the Lizzie Borden case.
What do you mean?
It forces us to confront the limits of what we can know,
Okay.
to grapple with ambiguity,
Yeah.
and to acknowledge that history is often,
Yeah.
a mix of facts and speculation.
Well said. I like that. A mix of facts and speculation.
So for you listening,
Yeah.
we hope this deep dive has given you
Yeah.
a more nuanced understanding of the Lizzie Borden case.
The complexities.
Yeah, its complexity.
The unanswered questions.
The unanswered questions and its lasting legacy.
Yeah. It's a case that continues to fascinate.
So keep exploring,
Yeah.
keep questioning,
Right.
and maybe you'll arrive at your own interpretation
Your own take on the case.
of what really happened on that fateful day
Back in Fall River.
in Fall River back in 1892.
Over a century ago.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.